The main thing that I want to say, and the context in which I want to talk about it, end of life, is that ethics is about how we treat other sentient beings. Ethics is about how we minimise unnecessary suffering, and about how, if possible, we can maximise well-being among other sentient beings. And however complicated those decisions are, they have to come down ultimately to respecting individual choices on personal autonomy. We should not make decisions based on what other people believe that the creator of the universe is telling them to do to us. These decisions, whatever you believe yourself, you should respect other people's religious or non-religious beliefs. I'm going to talk to you about just 3 people, 2 of whom have died recently and 1 of whom is dying, that are in various ways close to me. My father died last year. He was 89, and he died in hospital. He had excellent care in hospital. My brother, who was his carer, I suppose, on a day-to-day basis before he went into hospital, was not only visiting him in hospital, but was assisting him to the extent of sort of staying there after visiting hours and helping out. And he was able to sort of see behind the curtain of hospital care in a way that people who are just there during visiting hours don't, and he had nothing but praise for the attitude and the dedication and the work done by the hospital staff. In very difficult circumstances, and circumstances where hospital care is necessarily bureaucratic, because of lack of funding, decisions to a certain extent have to be taken more on the basis of assessment of probabilities than on assessment of individual cases than would be desirable. Obviously, you know, you try to do what you can, but the circumstances and the funding, the amount of people that have to be dealt with, create those issues. But all in all, my father, who was a very sort of deeply philosophical person, who knew that you can't get everything you want out of life, and was comfortable with the fact that he was going to die, ended up dying at the end of his natural life, being cared for both in hospital and with, if the possibility of him having come out of hospital, we had built an extension to his house, you know, disability approved, bathroom equipment, etc., etc. So he was lucky enough to have all of the options available to him, both in hospital and at home. So that's one way of dying as comfortably as you can. Obviously, it's not. Obviously, nobody wants to die, but if you're going to die, that's one way of dying as comfortably as you can, which is with excellent hospital care within the healthcare system. The second person that I want to say a few words about is my wife, Anne, who died 2 years ago. And Anne died of cancer. It was caught very late, and she was initially given 6 months to live. And she had an excellent oncology team in the Mater Private, and she lasted 1.5 years before she died, which is a lot longer than she had expected. So that was a year of a sort of bonus that we didn't think that we would have. But what was most important to Anne, unlike my father, was that Anne wanted the right to choose how she died at the end. She didn't want to either go through unnecessary suffering or to have other people decide how and when her death would come about. And so Anne had made preparations to take her own life if she needed to, and I had said that I would help her if she needed that help. And fortunately, as in most cases where people make preparations to take their own life because they're terminally ill. I'm not talking about people who want to commit suicide because of a temporary depressive state or mental illnesses. I'm talking about people who are of sound mind and who have either terminal or serious illnesses, and who have decided, based on their own rational decisions, that they want the opportunity to choose themselves how and when they die at the end. Like most people who make that decision and make those preparations, Anne died naturally at home. Because choosing how to die is not about the act of dying. It is about the quality of life that you get while you're still alive by knowing that the end is within your control. And from the moment that Anne made that decision, her quality of life absolutely soared for the last year of her life. And we were able to do a load of things that she had always wanted to do. We were able to, obviously because of chemotherapy sessions, we could only do things in small doses time-wise, but we got a lot in. Just some things were just silly things she'd always wanted to have a glass of Bordeaux in Bordeaux, so we did that. Things that you wouldn't normally even think of doing, but they become meaningful, even though they're meaningless in an overall perspective, when you are getting the most that you can into the time that you have left. And she would not have been able to do that psychologically if she had been spending her time worrying about somebody else determining how she died at the end. And it's not enough to say we can, palliative care is good, and we can relieve suffering, and we can tell you how you can relieve suffering, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was personal autonomy. The issue was being able to decide herself. And the third person that I want to talk to you about is Mary Fleming, who is currently taking a court case. She has taken a court case at the High Court, and is continuing with an appeal at the moment at the Supreme Court for the right to try to establish the right to assisted suicide in Ireland. And Mary is at a stage of her illness where she cannot physically commit suicide if she chooses to. She needs assistance to do so, and her partner, Tom Curran, who's a personal friend of mine and one of the most decent men that I know, has promised to help her to do that. And ironically enough, in terms of the arguments for criminalising assisted suicide, because Mary knew that her illness was progressive, and because Mary knew that she would reach a stage where she would not be able to take her own life by herself. She had wanted 5 years ago to go to Dignitas in Switzerland to commit suicide there with assistance. As an aside, my wife chose not to take that option on the basis that she had never been to Switzerland for a holiday in her life, and she certainly wasn't going to go there to die. But Mary wanted to end her own life at a time that she felt that she could still do so. Her partner Tom persuaded her not to, on the basis that if she stayed and didn't commit suicide in Switzerland, that if she did reach the stage where she was unable to take her own life physically, that he would assist her in doing so. So ironically enough, in the context of the argument about criminalising assisted suicide, in this case, the fact that she knew that somebody was prepared to help her to die kept her alive, and has kept her alive for 5 years longer than would otherwise have been the case. And ultimately this is the core issue of however. First of all, I'll tell you quickly about the case that she's taken. Her argument is that suicide is not illegal in Ireland, so she legally can commit suicide, but that she is discriminated against by the law by virtue of the fact that she requires assistance to commit suicide and able-bodied people don't. Now, however that case goes, and I suspect that the case will go against Mary and Tom, but however that case goes, Tom and Mary are going to do what Tom and Mary are going to do, just as Anne and I would have done what we were going to do. Because when people are terminally ill and have made their own ethical decision and are comfortable with the ethical decision that they've made, what the courts say is not very high on our list of priorities. And the consequences of what the courts or state may do is not very high on our lists of priorities. If I had assisted Anne to die, and if the state had taken action against me, I would have faced the consequence of that action, but it wouldn't have stopped me from doing it. Because ultimately, you do what you do out of love and compassion and out of your own sense of ethics, and that's all you can operate by. You can't operate on the basis of what other people think that the creator of the universe is telling them is right to do. You can only operate on the basis of your own ethical views. And if your own ethical views are about minimising suffering and about maximising well-being and about respect for personal autonomy, ultimately, whatever your personal feelings about what you want to do, you should respect the personal autonomy of the people who are facing that situation. Just as we respected my father's desires to stay alive to the end of his natural life and did all that we could, and we're glad of the treatment that he got in the hospital system to live as long as he could and to die naturally as he did. Just as I respected my wife's wish to die and prepare to die as she chose when she faced a terminal illness that only she was going through and only she should be in a position to decide how it ended. And just as I respect Mary Fleming's right to decide to do whatever she wants to do. And ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's not about what you believe yourself. It's about the right of other people who are going through that situation. And whatever the arguments about safeguards, and I agree there have to be safeguards. Obviously there have to be safeguards. But whatever, and there's also an issue about how far do you go and should people be allowed to have assisted suicide, at a younger age if they're not going through a terminal illness. But whatever about the nuances of those arguments, certainly what we're talking about here, which is end-of-life care, certainly when we're talking about people who are terminally ill, and when the question is not whether they will die, but how they will die and when they will die. Certainly in that situation, the individual conscience of a sound-minded person who has decided themselves that this is what they are comfortable with and that this is how they want to end their life should be respected. It was one of the things that Anne was very clear on. She said, look, this is the only thing this is the only decision I have left that I know that I'm in control of. There's a lot of things that I can't do now that I would have liked to do, but one thing that is still within my control is to decide how and when I will die. And as I say, like most people who make that preparation, they die naturally anyway. But they die knowing that they had within their control the option to end their suffering if they feel that it's necessary. Thank you very much.